Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Gooding. I'm the managing editor of Tech Monitor, and it's my pleasure today to open this exclusive webinar discussion, which we're running in partnership with Hexaware Technologies. The title of our webinar today is Vast, Fast, and Relentless Consumer Buying Enters a New Era. I mean, that's certainly something that we've witnessed ourselves here at Tech Monitor in our coverage. We are those of you who are not familiar, we're a publication which focuses on the issues that matter to tech leaders and ranging from really sort of technical stuff to bigger picture sort of topics of leadership and the sort of changing face of the customer relationship and how that relates to technical teams is a real sort of hot topic for our readers. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it today from our panelists. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sri Singaraju, who's the Senior Vice President in Digital Customer Experience at Hexaware, and he's going to be chairing our discussion today. Now, Sri is a true believer in the power of personalization and wants to support companies in their digital transformation journey and provide unique customer experiences. Hi, Sri, how's it going?
Good, Matt. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Sri Singaraju, as Matt just introduced me. I represent digital customer experience at Hexaware. It's my pleasure to be chairing this exclusive webinar discussion today. And at Hexaware, one of the key things that we do is help some of the world's leading brands develop digital customer experience and be successful with the transformation. So I'm super excited to participate in this webinar today.
That's great. Thanks, Sri. And I know you've got three great guest speakers here to dissect the challenges that business face in delivering excellent customer experiences for all their clients. So I'm going to pass the baton over to you now and leave you to chair this webinar. So thanks very much, and yeah, look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to welcome Anil Roy, Vice President, Digital Transformation Strategy Analytics at Ricoh USA, Michelle Beeson, Senior Analyst at Forrester, and Todd Miller, Senior Director of Brand Strategy and Experience at Wawa. Welcome all. I'll give you a brief moment to introduce yourself in your own words.
Thank
Anil?
you, Shri. Hi, my name is Anil Roy. I am Vice President, Corporate IT Applications for Ricoh. A little bit about Ricoh. We are a information management, and digital services company. Around the world, Ricoh serves about 1.4 million businesses, including 84% of the Fortune 500. Our mission and job is to bring people, process, technology together to solve data challenges and harness the power of information. And we unlock potential in every business. It's really, really great to be with this group. Thank you so much for having me.
Michelle?
Great. I'm Michelle Beeson. I'm a senior analyst at Forrester. Forrester is a research advisory firm, global presence. I'm based in London. My research looks at digital strategy and customer experience.
Todd?
Thanks for having me. I'm responsible for our brand strategy and experience here at Wawa. And for those not familiar with Wawa, we are generally looked at as a convenience store chain on the East Coast. Fast growing, food forward, a lot of exciting things in and around the brand. So I have the pleasure of working for our customers and associates every day to kind of bring all that stuff together. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you all for agreeing to take part in this discussion. We have a set of fun topics to talk through, get your perspectives, and also for everybody at home or office who are listening, viewing this webinar, please submit your questions for our speakers at any point during the session. There is a Ask a Question button on your screen. Please use that to do that, and we'll dive in. So let's get started. Michelle, you have, from your experience and research, some of the insights you would like to share, and then we will get perspective from Anil and Todd to respond to that. But walk us through your insights and research.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm going to share Forrester's view and some of the latest research and customer insights we have around the shifts that we're seeing in terms of the future of consumer buying and generally consumer engagement across industries. So we have come out of a pandemic only to be hit by economic headwinds. And in the midst of this, we're still dealing with the twists and turns of consumer behavior during and coming out of a pandemic and what that means going forward. But broadly, there are overarching trends that will continue. And certainly when we ask business executives globally what their top business priorities are, we see that improving customer experiences is right up there. This is particularly showing those respondents that are in retail and wholesale. But even if we look at the results for all industries globally, improving the experience of their customers is in the top three in terms of business priorities. And of course, actually, improving customer experience is also part of growing revenue and reducing costs. So, all three of those are working together to drive business performance forward. But also, when thinking about improving customer experience and what that means, there's also a shift for organizations, or I would say really a rebalance in terms of really driving towards customer acquisition and market share to also increasing the relative importance of building customer retention and more specifically, building valuable long term relationships. So, thinking about the customer's experience and how that is connected over time rather than point in time engagements. And within this, the ability to really improve customer experiences and develop that valuable long term relationship, there is a real need to have a deep understanding of customers across these three areas in particular. Their emotional connection to your brand and your organization through the way that they engage, the context of their engagement, so quite literally where they are and what device they're connecting through their interface, but also their intent. What is their goal at that moment in time, but also their intent within their broader customer needs. So, first, let's take emotion. Now, this is an aspect that is often underrated or not given the proper um, importance in terms of how much it factors into our rational decision making. And certainly at Forrester, many, many years of 10 plus years of researching customer experience, we know that customer experience quality is affected by the emotional sentiment that is derived over the course of customer interactions. Now, emotion is often thought about it has to be positive or negative, but positive emotions aren't just about making the customer happy. It's also about making a customer feel confident about their decision making, building trust that their engagement is secure or that they are valued as a customer and respected. All of those aspects are feeding into a positive emotional connection and emotional loyalty with a brand. And we often will think about how emotion and positive emotions are derived from not just thinking about the economic or functional needs of our customer, but their broader unmet needs. So, for instance, Eve isn't one of these online mattress brands, but Eve doesn't focus on selling mattresses, they sell a good night's sleep. They're focusing on the customer need, thinking about their broader context and circumstances and the values that the customer is after, the goals and their objectives that are more than just looking at particular product specs. For Logitech, it's also how they're curating content and resources to help the customer get to what they want. It's not that the customer's buying a load of computer peripherals. What they want is to create their own home office environment. So, how is Logitech supporting that with this guided question answer experience that will curate the recommended set of items for their particular context? And then also more simply, it's the functionality that's available for a customer themselves to be able to get to what they need, to curate the information, find the service, find the product. Perhaps it's related to a particular value they hold in terms of being vegan or allergies or gluten free. So in this case with Planet Organic, it's one of the food stores. It happens to be one that sells organic and vegan foods, but there are also additional factors in there of gluten free and being able to support the more specific, nuanced customer needs. And next is their context. Now, this is the age old thing that we've all been focused on for a long time. What device is the customer on? What channel are they on? But what's happening now is that there is more of a shift from engaging sequentially and going from device to device, channel to customers actually engaging across devices and interfaces simultaneously. So, more hybrid customer experiences. And in fact, we know that 45% of US online adults say they are more confident about their purchases when they use a smartphone to do research while they're in store. I think that's the most accessible uh, example of a hybrid experience. We're all grabbing our phone out of our pockets to inform whatever decision we're making, whether it's finding a taxi or knowing where we're going or planning our route somewhere or looking up particular product detail information using the store mode of a particular retailer's app or image recognition search to help us to curate through a vast catalog to find the specific content that we need. There's also an expectation for consumers around access to information and transparency. And whether that is through more innovative experiences in terms of virtual assistants, because 27% of US online adults already expect to be able to interact with a virtual assistant online. And there's an immediacy to that access of being able to put in my question, get an immediate response, even if that's not necessarily a live human being on the other end. It's an immediate reaction. It's also the different resources we have in terms of finding that information. 57% of US online adults are using social media not just for research, but to ask for help with using a product from a company or from another person after they've purchased, after they've engaged with that service or organization, reflecting the role of digital content and interactions in a long term customer relationship. And also, there's more of an expectation of having access to information that is in the broader context of an organization. And for retail, that's an expectation of transparency of product availability when you're online about the store. So for 63%, have being able to see product availability in store is a significant influencer on their purchasing decisions online. And then thinking about the role of digital in store and hybrid customer experiences, we're also seeing an extension of what traditionally is in person to person experiences, or the role of engaging with a store based associate, or for financial services with a branch based associate, and extending their value and access to digital customers. And more customers across markets, including the US, are engaging with those virtual connections, the virtual interfaces, and supporting more of that hybrid experience based on where the employee is, well as the customer, and what the interface connecting them is. So driving that connection in terms of the emotional connection, but also really understanding the context of the customer. And then last but not least is intent. Now, there are different aspects to this. This is broadly understanding what a customer's objective is and being able to support them. And at one level, it's being able to support a customer within their immediate context and their immediate objectives. So, this can be a very valuable role for content in terms of supporting decision making or access to the information they need at that moment in time. And considering I often look at retail, some of this from when you're thinking about clothing items, fit is a big challenge when you're coming to online purchases. And so there are more and more virtual assistants or fit assistants, size guides to be able to help to support those critical decisions and provide the information and avoid the pain points that consumers are often facing. But it also doesn't have to be the most new innovative virtual assistant interface or chatbot style experience. For Nordstrom's, it's using the resources they already have, having their store associates, those experts, do videos for particular items, describing the feel of the material, the way the style fits. It runs small, it runs large, giving the customer that extra context and detail and trust in the information to reassure and provide them that emotional feeling of confidence and reassurance in their purchasing decision. But it's also broader than that moment in time. Remember that increasingly organizations are needing to focus on that long term customer relationship. So it's also thinking about the end to end customer experience and what is the end-to-end customer experience, where particularly the organization itself is not the only one responsible for supporting that customer experience. So whether that is a brand who has a customer coming to your brand site because you want to know more about product information, but actually you want to buy through your local grocery store. So the brand is offering buy button links to facilitate that connected, easy customer experience. But actually, behind the scenes, it also requires a different cadence and set of collaboration and opportunity to develop that relationship between the brand and the retailer to ultimately support a better customer experience. So, when we're thinking about the need to build long term, valuable customer relationships, organizations really need to focus on developing a deep understanding of their customers in terms of their emotion, their context, and their intent to be able to improve customer experiences and ultimately drive business value. And with that, I will hand back to Shri.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. Those were great insights. The way you set it up with emotion, context, intent, they're magnified, especially in digital customer experiences, because there is an elevated level of anxiety people experience when they go through digital channels. They're performing, something as simple as buying something, or more complex, like using a banking application or an insurance
Mhm.
application. And understanding those three elements and tying them together, it makes a lot of sense. Todd or Anil, any additional remarks or things that caught your eye from the presentation that Michelle just went through?
See, I think it's very interesting how you laid it out, Michelle. Frankly speaking, we do it. Most of us relate to it, but we never compartmentalize it the way you did. So that was excellent. I think one of the things that came across was really, a comment that you made when you were walking through it, saying that, hey, it's not a point in time transaction experience, but versus a aggregation of the entire, pieces. And we've been talking about this with Enrico a lot as well, saying that, hey, how do you weave in an XLA, an experience level agreement, alongside with a service level agreement? And that's pretty much fit right in, line with what you were talking about, saying that, hey, XLA would probably be a summary of data points over a time versus a specific transaction point of time. And it should be driven by the factors such as ease of doing business, speed of service, quality, resolution, fulfillment, a whole bunch of items, as compared to, am I able to get the transaction through a website or a commerce channel
Mhm.
fast enough, and is the journey specific enough? I mean, it's a whole lot more than that. So we've been doing a lot of that internally here as well, and that resonated with me a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's not that one is better than the other. It's they're all adding additive to create the whole contextual experience of a customer's engagement over time, rather than what we tend to fixate on that conversion rate, that moment in time, because it's tangible and almost fixable. And it's harder to aggregate the view of long-term customer value, connecting the dots over time, let alone across all the touch
Yeah.
points that might be chosen over time.
Yeah. The most spirited discussions we are having on that topic specifically is, it's easy to track an SLA. It's easy. I mean there are very specific, whether it is time based, quality based, incident based, or whatnot. It's easy to track an SLA. How do you put measurement and quantification around XLAs? And that's where most of our conversations go in, saying that, okay, how do you weigh specific data points, survey results? How do you put governance and adherence around that? And how do you separate it by specific segment or tier of customers? And I think that's really where, there's a lot of, diverse viewpoints that are coming in. And I'd be really, really interested in seeing if you have any thoughts around that as well. So
Yeah, that's a complex question. It's one of
Yeah.
those where it depends on the
Yeah.
specific organization, but
Okay.
it's certainly a challenge I'm hearing. You're not alone in terms of trying to figure out what those principles look like in the context of your customer and your business. And that's very important for high performing organizations in terms of customer experience. They know their specific target customer and that context, that emotion. What is the relevant cadence of the customer journey in the context of your product, your service, your engagement? And it's not going to be the same for everyone else. So there's a shift in terms of what does the right target look like? What is that for your organization?
Cool. I didn't mean to put you on the spot here, Precious. So
Oh no.
yeah, it's a very very deep discussion topic.
Yeah,
I just want.
absolutely. Yeah.
Todd, your perspective and any insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me on our side, I think it maps very well to our journey. So it's exciting to hear and kind of hear reinforced just more of the focus on the overall customer experience, the overall journey. I agree. I think there's a lot of times a race to measurement, a race to kind of almost prove some of these kind of digital tactics and technologies without kind of taking a step back and saying at the end of the day, it's about the customer. What does the customer need? What are the kind of friction points that are popping up that we need to remove? How does this come together with our traditional commerce and our digital commerce? Like, what is the overall kind of need state? What is the overall journey that they're on? So definitely we're on that journey. We're definitely not done with that journey. I don't think you'll ever done with that journey when it comes to customers and customer
No.
behavior. So a good reinforcement of what we're working on and where we're heading.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. I was actually having conversations yesterday around the need to have more um, ROI effectively of customer experience projects, but that in that vein, it's the customer view of that digital engagement. What is the long-term value impact, not just in terms of my NPS metric or my customer satisfaction, but the monetary business
Mhm.
impact of that,
Yeah.
which is challenging for a lot of organizations to get to, but very possible.
Mhm.
So, diving into our first topic that we teed up, as Michelle's intro gave us the perspective, last couple of years was a whirlwind of changes in the customer experience journey, right? Like from the scary days of March 2020 to all of the excitement last couple of years, and now looking forward to some of the economic headwinds that are being projected. I wanted to, just get your perspective, maybe Todd, starting with you. What were some of the interesting things that you have seen get accelerated over the last couple of years, specifically in your industry and domain? And then what kind of things do you see persisting as we go into 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that we all saw a much greater acceleration of digital adoption, especially kind of in our world. I think a lot in the QSR world. Any people were just looking for other ways to kind of, be safe, other ways to kind of speed up the shopping journey. But that digital adoption was real, and for companies that were kind of going down that journey, you accelerated even more. For companies that weren't, you now had the invent and kind of bring those things into market quickly. So it was interesting to see a lot of the piloting, a lot of the testing, a lot of the different ways that brands as well as us went at it. So that digital adoption, that digital customer experience, all ultimate ways to kind of serve your product. That was probably the biggest change that we saw over the last number of years. I think we still continue to see that and expect to see that into next year. But there's also a shift too into trying to find not only different ways to shop, more convenience, less maybe in-person frequent trips, but also how can I find and get more value for my dollar as well too. So I think those are kind of the two things that we have our eye on that are going to be a continuation. We don't see digital adoption slowing much. We see more and more seeking value and more kind of hesitation on going out for certain occasions. So it's like, how can we understand that behavior? How can we make sure we're continually adapting to those needs? That's kind of the ongoing focus that we have going into 2023.
And Todd, was there anything that surprised, over the last year in terms of customer behavior, consumer behavior, that, looking back, it makes sense, but during the moment, that surprised you from how it morphed?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? I think one of the exciting things about our business is that we really attract such a wide variety of people that shop us. So within a lot of our different customer segments, it's very interesting to see how, baskets shifted, how frequency shifted. A lot of it has been as more and more companies come back to a hybrid work versus full remote or things like that, just seeing how the day parts are shifting. There's a lot of interesting things around that. Even, things as looking at the difference between um, a third party delivery provider and how people shop us there versus an in-app delivery service that is using a third party provider. They wickedly shift when it comes to time of day. And again, what that basket looks like. So there's a lot of really interesting things, and it goes back to a lot about what Michelle was talking about is understanding the customer and that journey, because there's a lot of intricacies and a lot of power in kind of circulating and kind of orienting around that kind of customer at the hub of all of your decisions and all of your kind of work.
That's great. Anil, to bring you into the conversation, from your perspective, what were some of the key things that you experienced over the last couple of years? And then, how are you ramping up for the changes that are expected in 2023 and beyond?
Sure. So I think our customer base is a little bit different than what Todd was talking about. We primarily serve the B2B segment. Um, and I think what we are noticing is that more and more, and 100%, aligning to what Todd was saying, the speed and the pace at which digital adoption happened in the last couple of years was mind bending. I think we see a lot of customers, pretty much all the customers, expect a frictionless experience. I think that's one of the key things that's driving most conversations around the brand experience or around what the customers expect of us, whether it is part of the buying journey, which would be like a commerce interaction or customer support or post sale. So a lot of initiatives that are happening within Rico are really around enabling a frictionless experience, remote or touchless interaction. And one of the pleasantly surprising shifts that we have seen is customers are willing to experience or experiment a lot more with new technology. So this is leading to a lot of co-innovation initiatives with customers, solution built fit for purpose for the customers, which then feeds into your traditional buying experience or buying journey. So that's something that we've seen, whether it is in the data space or whether it is in AI or ML space. We see that a lot of customers are actually willing to have the conversation with us, saying that, hey, can you do something um, for us, because this is the specific problem definition we have, which actually feeds into the entire experience. So that's something which was a little bit surprising to me. So yeah.
It's fascinating. Michelle, pulling you into this conversation, if you can respond to some of the things you saw, but also from your perspective, you have a much wider lens than most of us. What were some of the things that were being projected out that maybe did not pan out exactly the way, right? Like, it'll be good to get that perspective, because it's always good to ground ourselves, as people make projections, playing
Hmm.
both, like what worked and what quite did not shape out, so that it informs us as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to say some things, and I'm actually interested in what Todd has to say, because you said that you finding your customers still digital and not going back to the store with the same velocity or comfort levels. And actually, I see that in our data. I've been surprised. I thought that consumers would go back to store with more force more quickly. But it's not necessarily happened in that way. But on the flip side, what I've also found is that during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk around the consumers now digital. There's more digital engagement, and that's absolutely true. And that was already happening, but the pandemic accelerated it. But thinking back to the context of emotion, context, and intent, we had an unusual context in that, some of those options of engagement just weren't available to us, and our normal patterns of daily life have shifted. So the role of digital changes. And what I'm seeing more of is that it's not digital or store, it's how are digital and physical, whether it's your human resources, sales teams in a B2B, associates in branch or associates in store alongside digital, how are we adapting and using that in a way that matches our customer. And it's a lot more pressure internally to must shift the success metrics, shift, how we evaluate the use cases and ROIs of our stores and our people, because the way we're using them is changing. So, thinking about stores aren't just about traffic. I have a lot of conversations. We need drive traffic back to the store. It's like, yeah, but that's not all of the equation anymore. Stores can be part of your fulfillment and supply chain. There can also be supporting the digital customer. Like, what is your business broader context as well? And how are those building blocks shifting?
Yeah, and just kind of jumping in there, I think for us, you know, by far, our stores are the majority of our transactions, and we are, our associates are kind of really the key to Wawa in so many ways, and really about the core of that shopping experience. We honestly went into this too when things were accelerating. Like, well, does everything kind of peak, and do we see a big valley because everyone returns? And but the reality is, what we're seeing is people are returning to the stores. We never lost. We always saw strong store shopping, but we still continue to see people come back and see those numbers continue to grow.
Mm,
But we're also not seeing that dip in digital behavior. The reality is, I think a lot of people saw and adapted to these new ways. And depending on whether you have time to stop or not, you now have a curbside option. Now if you decided you're going to work from home that day, you now have a delivery option. So the reality is, people, I think, just learned they have more tools in their toolkit, more ways to kind of fly through their day. And we, Wawa, want to be there to help them with that. So I think a lot of it is, again, I think the world continues to get more and more complex. It doesn't simplify. The reality is, people are going to shop you in a variety of different ways depending on how they want to shop you. And now they know that they can shop you and they can trust a lot of these digital channels in ways that, quite frankly, maybe they didn't have the need to before, because, we try to be as convenient as we can. And probably our biggest barrier traditionally has always been with digital has been, well, you're already fast. We already can kind of get to you. You already are great. Like, I'm kind of just used to shopping you in this way. And now they're seeing, wow, you're also great in these other ways as well too. And that's why we also use companies like Hexaware to just really help us understand how can we continue to kind of hone this experience and get new features and new things out the door, just to make sure that we're keeping up with their expectations and keeping up with that need and continuously adapting, because things just don't hold still.
And Anil, from your perspective, Rico, you have primarily a B2B, interaction, but your ultimate customers, there are consumer journeys that go all the way, some cases B2B to C, and maybe even some cases B2C. When you think of digital, how do you make sure your strategies could possibly reinforce and support each of those consumer journeys?
See, that's a very interesting question. Very complex question, to be honest. I think, like what Michelle was saying and what Todd's saying. I mean, for Rico, our customer is businesses. I mean, they're not individuals. Obviously, all businesses are made up of individuals who make the buying decisions or so. Post pandemic, we were surprised at the speed at which all businesses adopted to a remote work strategy and a hybrid work strategy, the definition of office radically changed, and it's pretty certain now that it's no longer a transitionary phase. I mean, which actually drove a lot of you know uh, selling processes and support processes to be as touchless and as remote as possible. I think, see, the main difference between the B2B and B2C commerce, I mean, it's B2B involves more needs-based purchasing and less marketing-driven buying. I mean, there are multiple departments within businesses. The purchases are not usually done over credit cards. I mean, they are usually upwards of, several $1,000s or so. The purchasers are typically repeat purchasers. However, the commonalities are still the same. So we call it B2B2C, uh, which is personalization, which is a key driver for a B2C customer. uh, the businesses expect not exactly the same. I mean, they don't expect anything less. Personalization, frictionless buying experience, like I was speaking about earlier, pre-sale, post-sale support, connected processes, omni-channel experiences. I think we focus on these commonalities while keeping in mind the unique requirements of the business requirements as such. And our strategies are 100% driven by that. Uh, so it's a balance that we need to do. We cannot individualize each customer journey, so we focus on segments, and then we focused on the solution set that we target for that segment, and that's how we go about doing this.
That's great. Michelle, anything else you want to highlight, things that resonated on this session?
Um, yeah, I mean, there are lots of places we could go in terms of the conversation. I think that there are certain things that have shifted if we're thinking about the internal business and the way we're working, regardless of whether it's B2B or B2C. Um, and maybe it's more of a question actually of I'm hearing it from a B2C side actually when I'm speaking to retailers and brands in particularly that they're, getting cost pressures, having to really almost audit their technology set to see whether there are investments they've made in technology, they have multiple use cases, but they're only making use of one of those use cases because it was purchased for that particular team and output. But actually, there's more within that, more capability that could be making use from marketing or from another part of the team, but it's not been reflected on or looked at in terms of different perspectives and different functions. A lot of that's driven just by cost pressures and needing to review their tech stack. I wonder if that's something that kind of resonates with either Todd or Anil in terms of when you're thinking about the shift to digital, whether you're supporting your employees or your customers, the technology that you have to do so is the enabler of that. Are there big gaps there? Are you having to kind of reassess what is it that we've got? Do we know everything that we've got because it's gotten so complex or
Yeah. See, I think one of the things that at least we've seen post pandemic, there's a lot of stress, rightfully so. There's a lot of stress on general employee wellness, mental health, and you know the well-being of the employee themselves, whether it is employee or whether it is solutions that we are building for customers.
Mm,
Frankly speaking, that was not expected. We were not thinking that there'll be so much. So the solutions that we are building, to answer your question, specific pieces of technology are there in place. Like, say for example, when you walk into the office, you badge in. It's pretty simple. I mean, you badge in, but now you badge in with a device which actually monitors your temperature, and I mean that can flag things to specific departments out, depending on whether you are in a sensitive environment because we will have employees go in to hospitals or to other sites which may be not your pure play corporate office. So we had to really think through a lot of these pieces. Even though the specific individual technology components were there, how do you stitch together a solution which really solves for the overall requirement around employee wellness and
mm,
the general well-being of your customers as well? So that was an interesting, discussion that we
Yeah.
were having, and the solutions that we were implementing based on that. Were the technology there in place? Always, it's always there in place. But how do you stitch that solution together?
Yeah.
Was a shift for us. Yeah.
Todd, I know from your perspective, the store associate wellness and what their management was a big consideration, especially for the curbside pickup, because the number of orders at times of day could explode and put a significant amount of stress and on the store associate. So those are different contexts, but similar types of considerations, I presume, from your standpoint, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I mean, there's many things about Wawa. We're a very values-driven organization, very much about that customer and associate interaction. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that when, the pandemic happened, the number one concern was how do we protect our customers and our associates? Like, it wasn't about cash flow, it wasn't about profitability, it wasn't about, this channel, that channel. It was like, how do we adapt? How do we make sure that we are all about protecting our communities? And we are one of those businesses that is the first to open after a hurricane or is open during one. Like, we're an essential provider by our nature, so our stores don't shut down. They, in a lot of ways, can be the only hub for, or the only place for a nurse that's working a late shift, or someone that is in an emergency response to get food, get coffee, to get fuel. So just knowing that number one reaction was, how do we provide a safe environment for our customers and our associates? It's just, again, it's amazing to see from a cultural standpoint. I think when you're dealing with the growth in these digital channels and the growth and the complexity of our business, change management's no joke. The reality is a lot of time, a lot of care, a lot of conversations need to go into all of it. And I think if you think you're going to put a lot of time into change management, double it, triple it. You really need to put a lot more in, especially when you have a lot of associates, a lot of things going on. I think even when it comes down to your technology and your technology stack, the reality too is, like, if you haven't been on this digital journey for a while, you're kind of late to the game. The best thing in the world you can do is think about this in an omni-channel, flexible platform kind of way. And I think if you don't have that infrastructure in place, you're going to be hard for you to adapt. You're going to have a lot of siloed technologies and a lot of siloed, weird experiences for your customers. And the reality is they're seeing it from others where they don't have those impediments and those challenges. So you have a lot of quick ground to make up to kind of try to unite these experiences, remove these friction points, remove these gaps, in some ways kind of completely overhaul that core infrastructure, because if it isn't there, you kind of can't fake it. So there's a lot of those challenges that everyone's really dealing with, and it really depends on where you're at and your overall maturation as a business.
That's a great segue into the next topic I wanted to bring up, which is, so you started talking a little bit about, employee wellness, the care that, you all talked about, making sure employees and associates are well taken care of, technology investments, pulling it back. There are a lot of initiatives, in your organizations that you could consider making from a digital customer experience standpoint, whether it is investing in data and coming up with better recommendations, forecasting, fraud detection, all of the machine learning driven ideas, creating more friction-free experiences. It's a target-rich environment, and there are so many things that are exciting. I wanted to get your perspective, starting with Anil. How do you go about making a case and evaluating if a certain initiative or an idea that popped up is the right way to do, and the process that you go through to evaluate and start investing in some of these initiatives?
See, we typically have to take a long-term horizon. Um, if anything, the pandemic has taught us that right at 2019, before we went into this, I don't think that anybody was focused on, as much focused on remote work, digitization, and things like that. Uh, So that was a sort of a trigger for us to really take a look at the long term horizon. And also, a lot of things that we are talking about right now is where do we see the organizations and the corporate world 3 years, 4 years down the line? And a lot of things that are happening right now, which are outside our immediate area of influence, such as, um, I'll give an example, supply chain constraints that all of us are aware of. It is forcing customers to pivot more on lease-based purchases as compared to buy purchases, because inventory is not there. You just extend the lease and then you go on. So that actually creates an opportunity for us, which is focus on specific channels or focus on specific certain devices, and those initiatives are based 100% triggered by what's happening in and around us, and where we see these things either getting resolved or not getting resolved. All of us expected that return to work is going to be a lot more accelerated and exponential, but now we are learning that that's not going to happen. It's not going to be getting back to where we were in 2018, 2017. So given that, where should the focus of our next set of solutions and products and technologies be? So a lot of these discussions are not necessarily based on cost and uh, you know uh, what it takes to sell and what it takes to drive revenue. It's really based on the consumer trends, given a whole lot of things that are happening in and around us. So interestingly enough, the discussions are a lot more different now than where it used to be, which was a specific initiative based.
Mm.
And also, one of the things that we are noticing is that consumers are having a lot more weightage on things such as trust, brand alignment of, social causes such as diversity, sustainability, and things like that. So we are always trying to, put in initiatives around, like, say, for example, we are a FDA certified medical device manufacturer, just as an FYI. Um, we print 3D, body parts. So now we need to make sure that we have high trust certification. So there's a lot of initiatives which are not necessarily an immediate ROI from a financial dollar standpoint, but it weighs into your alignment towards sustainability or security or certain things like that. So a lot of those factors do weigh in our discussions with regards to what should the total overall investment be on what initiatives, and what are the triggers that it's going to help us. So yeah.
That's insightful. Todd, how about from your perspective, like the decision-making process around where do you put the bets on different initiatives, evaluate the success of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple different dimensions to it. So, one is having your finger on the pulse of the customer. What are they doing? What are the needs? What are the emerging trends? Which customer segments, demographics are gravitating towards those things? And a lot of it is also trying to figure out, like, again, depending on the style of your company, are you early adopters? Are you late adopters? Where do you fit on that overall adoption curve is always important. And I think for us, we try to monitor proactively um, all the varieties of ways that new technologies are driving new behaviors. We have a couple ways that we also look at when things are starting to hit a certain adoption rate, and then trying to time kind of our customer experience work and our technology work to match that. So that's an ongoing kind of discipline, and I'm not here to say we have it perfect. It's an ongoing evolution, but that's kind of how we look at it. And then ultimately, it comes down to being able to tell the story around this change in adoption, being able to measure and project out where you think it's going, and then it's really about telling a compelling story and tying it to a strong business case, because ultimately you want to show that you have skin in the game for the idea or the solution or the direction that you went ahead as well too. Those things come together, and those things help you kind of get things moving, whether it's a POC just to kind of get something together, whether it's release of a minimal lovable product. There's a variety of ways that we go at it depending on how mature we think an area might be. So that's how we look at it. And there's always a variety of things fighting for attention. So I think the more you can kind of help measure, help tell that story, help put that business case together, it helps you kind of really kind of clarify where things fit in the prioritization of your company.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Michelle, as you look at industry wide, like how do you see organizations, wrestle this challenge of too many opportunities to pursue, too
Yeah.
few dollars and attention to go around?
Yeah. No, it's interesting whenever everything Anil and Todd have just said resonates completely across industries and what we see, and it's really this balancing act effectively of what's the business impact, the customer need, but also keeping your eye on the horizon and anticipating and having your readiness at an appropriate level for upcoming. And when I say that, I'm thinking of very recent conversations around metaverse for different brands and contexts. And metaverse doesn't exist right now, but that there are brands, and our surveys say brands have adopted the metaverse far more than consumers are adopting the metaverse as it stands. However, for certain brands and organizations, they've learned the hard way that if you don't anticipate and look at changes in technology, you're going to get burned. So again, it's the balance of how much you do that, and how focused you are on that.
It's great. There are a couple of audience questions, and I think these are topics that probably prompted from some of the conversations. There is a question on ESG is an important consideration for certain demographics of consumers. How do you communicate ESG initiatives as part of your brand value? Anil, you actually unprompted brought up this topic in terms of how Rico looks at this as part of the overall criteria for making investments and making decisions on which direction to go. But how do you guys communicate the value and your commitment to these initiatives?
See, sustainability is one of the pillars for us. I mean, when we talk about RICO values, love your neighbor, love the world, love your work. I mean, that's the core, at the heart of everything that what we are doing. Sustainability, commitment to environment. It's actually a measured metric within our product portfolio that we would roll out, which actually has specific metrics and specific certifications that we have to do to make sure that it's in alignment with that. And we pride ourselves in making sure that the parts that we use, the plastic that we use, or the consumption of power that we have are really well defined within the specific parameters that we communicate. And most of it, not most of it, pretty much all of it is auditable, and we actually brand that as one of our key selling points to the customers. So yeah, and not just in the products, but even in alignment and support to the causes that are happening around us. I mean, you'll always see Rico, part of those specific social causes as well. So yeah.
That's great. The next question is around chatbots. I'm sure I personally have spent most of my weekend trying to get the GPT 3.0 chatbot answer all kinds of questions, write skits on Seinfeld-themed episodes. So we all played with it. It's a fascinating tool. Todd, I'm posing this to you. Have you tried conversational agents like chatbots? I'm sure GPT-3 is relatively new release from OpenAI, but in general, have you guys piloted conversational agents? And generally, what was your experience from customer adoption or consumer adoption around technologies like that?
Shri, I have to be honest with you today. I actually am AI generated. This is not Todd. This is I'll build on the OpenAI and chatbot. You just outed me. This is just kidding.
And Todd, you copied me all of these questions were prompted by ChatGPT. So this is just two bots going against.
Absolutely, yes. It's a very interesting space. I mean, I think conversational UI, I think chatbots, you're seeing it mature greatly, before our eyes. I mean, I spent the same weekend not only, generating and asking questions, but also I had my profile picture. I got turned into an anime creature as well as a astronaut. There's a lot of interesting technologies that are out there. I think we're dabbling. I got to be honest with you. I don't know that we found the right fit, the right technology for how we want to go after that experience for there's been, there are some limitations. There's a lot of questions that, if you think about our business, it's a very complex business. There's a lot of ways that we want to go at it. So I would say we've piloted, we've tested, we've used a variety of different platforms. It's an area where we'll continue to kind of invest and look at it. I would not be surprised if you see some continued testing from us in the near future. But I am really excited about how some of these technologies are coming together. I'm excited about how people are embracing them and how they're engaging with them and testing them. So I'm really excited to see where this heads over the next year. And I think that chatbot game is going to be a whole different thing in just a little bit of time once we give it a little bit more time to kind of bake and continue to grow.
That's great. Michelle, I'll give you the last word on these two topics, either ESG or chatbot. Take it either way you want to weigh in
Yeah,
on.
no, I mean, I can say a little to both. I think chatbots is an interesting area because you've seen from what I presented earlier, consumers 27% for US already expect to be able to interact with a virtual assistant. However, the quality of that virtual assistant, what it can do, its limitations, we're at a certain stage now. But in terms of the future of digital experiences broadly, there will be a need to understand and anticipate customer experiences and react as close to real time as possible, if not real time. All of that is right there. There's an expectation, a desire now to do it, but we're evolving towards it in reality. And then with ESG, this is a really interesting area because it's one of those aspects that's addressing the broader customer need and intent, the values that they hold. And we're doing a lot of research at Forrester, and we know that consumers are very worried, interested, actively looking at the impact of their social and environmental impact of their consumption. And it really does factor into their decision making. But then there's also the caveat of in what context, for what product, for what service, at what point, in what way. That sustainability in itself is a very broad topic, from your packaging to your supply chain to your processes. So there's a lot of richness there, but I think organizations will only continue to engage with it, and there'll be a certain level where certain things will become hygiene factors if everyone will just have to be doing it. Whether that's driven by government regulations, consumer pressure, corporations themselves, it's going to be a mix and shift by region.
Yeah, totally. I know we're coming up on top of the hour for this webinar, but all of the topics that we talked about, the innovation, being able to partner with organizations like yours and actually implement from a Hexaware standpoint, super exciting because we're living and breathing this side by side with you all, and being able to look back and see the adoption that your customers are getting and helping them create these experiences, that most exciting part of our job. So, and I thank you all for spending this morning with us to share your experiences, and for the audience questions. I think it's been super exciting.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.